There is a quiet terror in this world, often hidden beneath the surface of daily life. It is not the thunderous storm or the raging fire that troubles the soul the most, but the silent cruelty of those who choose to harm the innocent. Behind gentle eyes and trusting hearts, behind the silent prayers whispered in the night, there lives a depth of pain that few can comprehend. Pain inflicted not by strangers, but by hands that were once trusted, voices once believed, promises once held dear. The innocent do not carry swords. They walk softly through life, believing in kindness, hoping for goodness in others. They give love freely, they trust without conditions, and they extend mercy without keeping score. But it is this very innocence that invites the wolves to circle. There are those, corrupted by their own arrogance and hunger for dominance, who see the innocent not as souls to protect, but as prey to exploit. They see purity as weakness. They see kindness as an invitation to conquer. Have you ever wondered why some people, intoxicated by their own sense of power, seem so determined to break the gentle-hearted? Why they go out of their way to betray, to deceive, to damage those who would have done anything for them? It is because, deep inside, their twisted souls cannot bear the light the innocent carry. Your goodness, your grace, your quiet strength, it exposes their darkness. And rather than confront their own emptiness, they choose to try and shatter you. But here is a truth that has echoed since the beginning of time, a truth woven into the very fabric of creation. When you strike at the innocent, you do not strike alone at a person. You strike at the justice of God Himself. You provoke the defender of the undefended. You awaken the hand of divine justice that does not sleep, does not forget, and does not allow cruelty to reign unchecked. They thought your silence was consent. They mistook your patience for powerlessness. They believed that their hidden attacks, their whispered lies, their secret betrayals would never come to light. But they have forgotten something crucial. The eyes of man may close, but the eyes of God remain open, always open. It is a dangerous game they played, wounding hearts that had done them no harm, and the cost of this cruelty is far greater than they can imagine. For when the innocent bleed, heaven watches, and when heaven watches, judgment is not far behind. So, to those who have suffered in silence, to those whose tears have fallen unseen, know this: your pain has not gone unnoticed. The divine ledger has recorded every injustice. The weight of your sorrow has been placed upon the scales of justice, and those scales are tipping. And now, as you stand at the edge of despair, wondering if justice will ever arrive, I tell you, it is already in motion. They believed they could harm you without consequence, but they have awakened a force far greater than their schemes. God cripples those who dare hurt the innocent, not with the weapons of men, but with the invisible blows of life unraveling, of peace vanishing, of success crumbling to dust in their hands. Their downfall is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when, and that day is drawing near. Which leads us to understand deeply and fully the inevitable fate of those who lift their hands against the pure-hearted. Let us now journey into these truths and see clearly the price they must pay. As we move forward, let these truths not merely be words, but echoes in your heart, reminders that no cruelty goes unanswered and no innocent soul remains forgotten. Here are the revelations you must hold tightly. They mistook innocence for weakness, but innocence is protected by divine power. There is a cruel mistake that those who harm the innocent always make. They see purity, and they believe it is helplessness. They see gentleness, and they believe it is weakness. They see the kindness in your eyes, the forgiveness in your heart, and they assume that you are fragile, that you can be shattered like glass beneath their feet. What they fail to understand is that innocence is not the absence of strength. It is strength in its purest, most powerful form. It is strength that does not need to parade itself. It is strength that trusts in a higher protection. A strength wrapped in grace. They thought you were defenseless because you chose not to fight back with the weapons they used against you. They mistook your silence for surrender, your patience for powerlessness. But deep within your quiet endurance, there was something they could never touch. The unseen hand of divine protection guarding you at every step. For while they believed they were free to harm you as they pleased, they were blind to the eyes of heaven, watching every moment, recording every cruelty, counting every tear. Have you ever wondered why, despite their relentless attacks, you were not entirely broken? Why, though you felt the sting of betrayal and the weight of injustice, something inside you refused to collapse completely? It was because divine power upheld you when your own strength seemed to vanish. The hands of the Almighty caught you when you fell. Even in your darkest hours, when you believed you had been abandoned, heaven stood guard over your soul, refusing to let you be destroyed. They could not see the invisible walls that protected you. They could not hear the whispered prayers that summoned angels to your side. They saw only a person they believed they could overpower, a spirit they believed they could crush. But they were blind to the reality that innocence calls upon a force far greater than human malice. They never realized that every time they tried to drag you down, they were not simply contending with you, they were contending with the authority of the heavens. In their arrogance, they believed they were in control. They thought they could shape your destiny with their cruelty. They imagined that their harsh words, their betrayals, their schemes would define the course of your life. But they underestimated the power of the one who defends the innocent. They could lay traps for you, but they could not foresee the divine hands dismantling those traps before they could destroy you. They could pour out venom, but they could not stop the antidote of grace that flowed into your wounds. Your innocence was never a weakness. It was, and always will be, your greatest armor. The purity of your heart stood as a shield between you and the venom of their intentions. While they mocked you for your compassion, they did not realize that compassion was the very reason heaven fought for you. While they laughed at your kindness, they could not see that kindness summoned forces far beyond their understanding. There is something terrifying for them in this truth, that they warred not only against flesh and blood, but against the sacred protection wrapped around you. They touched what they had no right to touch. They trespassed into territory guarded by divine law, and though they believed they had succeeded in harming you, they were in reality walking deeper into their own downfall. Because innocence, true innocence, is never left unguarded. It may seem exposed to the harsh winds of betrayal. It may appear vulnerable before the storms of cruelty, but it is always encircled by the unseen. The universe, in its divine wisdom, shelters the pure-hearted, preserves their spirit, and prepares their restoration, even while the wicked celebrate too soon. And as they reveled in their supposed victory over you, they did not realize they were already standing in the shadow of their own judgment. For the innocent are never truly alone, and those who dare to harm them unknowingly declare war against the very forces that hold the universe together. Their secret sins are dragging them into the open. There is a strange confidence in those who harm the innocent behind closed doors. They move in silence, like shadows that believe they will never meet the morning light. They weave their webs of deceit, thinking no one will notice. They sharpen their daggers behind the scenes, believing that if no one sees them, there will be no consequences. They carry out their betrayals with a smirk, assuming that secrecy is immunity, that the cover of darkness is a shield strong enough to protect them from exposure. But what they forget, or perhaps what they choose to ignore, is that no secret remains buried forever. No hidden act of malice can stay concealed when the winds of justice begin to blow. Every secret sin is like a seed planted in the soil of time, and in due season it bursts forth, fully visible for all to witness. The very earth itself seems to reject the poison they tried to hide beneath its surface. They thought they were clever, hiding behind masks of charm and pretense. To the world they appeared innocent, even admirable. But beneath the surface they nursed venomous intentions, harboring cruelty in the quiet corners of their hearts. They thought that their facade would protect them, that they could harm you in private while maintaining their spotless image in public. Yet they did not account for the relentless pursuit of truth. Have you ever sensed it? The small cracks forming in their mask, the whispers of truth beginning to seep through the walls they built so carefully. Life has a way of unraveling the fabric of deception. Slowly at first, like the first rays of dawn creeping over a dark horizon, but then swiftly until the entire landscape is flooded with light. What they thought was buried begins to rise, undeniable and unstoppable. Their sins, once hidden so carefully, now betray them. The very lies they told begin to conflict, to twist upon themselves, to expose the inconsistencies they thought they had concealed. The people they deceived begin to question, begin to see the gaps in the stories told, and the truth, once ignored, begins to roar in the silence they tried so hard to maintain. They are being dragged into the open, not by your hands, but by the hands of justice itself. What they inflicted upon you in secret is being displayed before all. They can no longer control the narrative. They can no longer silence the truth. The same darkness they used to harm you is now the very darkness that is consuming them, making them visible to all they wish to fool. Imagine their torment, the growing fear in their eyes as they realize the walls are closing in, the fear of exposure, the terror of being seen for who they truly are. They sense it in the way others look at them, in the way conversations change, in the way whispers follow them like shadows. They sense the tide turning, and no matter how fast they run, the flood is overtaking them. And here is the beauty of divine justice. It does not need your hand to reveal their sins. You do not need to shout your truth to the rooftops. Life itself, in its intricate wisdom, exposes them. Their secrets, heavy with the weight of guilt, rise to the surface like stones in clear water. And as they rise, the world sees what was once hidden, and their mask shatters under the weight of undeniable truth. Their confidence has become their curse. There was a time when their confidence seemed unshakable. They walked with the air of someone who believed they were invincible, as if life itself bent to their will. They spoke with arrogance, their voices filled with the certainty of people who thought they could never be caught, never be judged, never be held accountable for the damage they caused. Their steps were loud, their laughter full of scorn, as if they stood above the consequences that bind the rest of the world. They believed that because they had succeeded in hurting you, in breaking your spirit, they were untouchable. But what they failed to understand is that confidence, when built on cruelty, becomes a curse of its own making. It blinds them to danger. It deafens them to the warnings that life whispers before it roars. In their pride, they mistook temporary victories for permanent power. They believed that because the sky was clear today, no storm would ever come. But storms do not announce their arrival to the arrogant. They descend suddenly, and they spare no one who stood proudly beneath their false shelter. Think back to the moments when they gloated over your pain. Remember how they wore their triumph like a crown, parading their victories in front of you without shame. They delighted in your tears, feeding their egos on your quiet suffering. But what they could not see was that their very confidence was setting a trap beneath their feet. Every time they celebrated your despair, they were tightening the noose of their own downfall. Every time they laughed at your broken heart, they were weaving the web that would eventually entangle them. Their confidence kept them from seeing the cracks forming beneath them. They believed they had outsmarted life itself. They thought their manipulation was flawless, their deceit impenetrable. But arrogance blinds men to the danger of their own footsteps. They could not feel the ground shifting beneath their prideful strides. They could not hear the silent approach of justice, coming not with trumpets, but with quiet certainty. Have you noticed it now? The hesitation creeping into their once confident steps, the flicker of doubt crossing their faces, like shadows chasing the light. They feel it, even if they do not admit it. Deep inside, where no one else can see, they sense that something has changed. What once felt like solid ground now feels unstable beneath them. What once felt like triumph now tastes bitter in their mouths. Their confidence, once their greatest weapon, has become the very weight pulling them down. It led them to underestimate the power of truth, the patience of the innocent, and the certainty of justice. In their pride, they charged forward without caution, believing they could harm others without facing the consequences. But life, in its perfect balance, has a way of turning pride into poison. What was once their armor now corrodes their soul from within. And there is a silent satisfaction in watching this transformation unfold, not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of understanding that justice has its own rhythm, its own pace. They are learning through their own unraveling that no amount of confidence can protect a person from the weight of their wrongs. No mask of arrogance can shield them from the light of truth when it shines directly upon them. Their pride convinced them they could play with fire without being burned, but now, as the flames lick closer to their feet, they begin to understand the price of their hubris. Their fall began the moment they believed they were too powerful to fall at all, and though they may try to rebuild their facade, to patch the cracks and silence their fears, it is too late. The damage is done. Their confidence, once their crown, has become their curse, and it follows them with every step they take. Their success will rot from within. At first glance, it may appear that they are thriving. From the outside, their life looks untouched by their sins. They wear their success like shining armor, their smiles wide, their voices filled with pride as they speak of their achievements. They move through the world with an air of triumph, as though their cruel actions left no trace upon their destiny. They fooled many into believing they had escaped the consequences of their wrongdoing. To the world, they look victorious, but beneath that polished surface, decay has already begun. Their success is not as it seems. It is not built on honor or hard-earned victories. It is built on the backs of the innocent, on the tears of those they hurt, on the silent suffering they caused, and anything built upon such a foundation cannot endure. No matter how brightly it shines for a moment, corruption festers beneath, like worms beneath a ripe fruit. The rot begins quietly, hidden from view, but it grows with relentless certainty. You may have wondered, perhaps in your quiet moments of pain, why they seem to flourish while you struggle to breathe beneath the weight of their betrayal. It felt unfair, as if the universe had turned its face away from justice. But justice, though it moves with patience, never forgets its duty. The very success they took such pride in is slowly becoming their undoing. The sweetness they once tasted is turning bitter. The victories they once celebrated are becoming burdens too heavy to bear. Their wealth cannot buy them peace. Their applause cannot silence the whispers of guilt that echo in their minds. Their accomplishments cannot shield them from the internal corrosion that eats away at their spirit. Outwardly they wear the mask of success, but inwardly they wrestle with a darkness that grows more suffocating with each passing day. They cannot escape it. It clings to them like a shadow, following them into every moment of solitude, haunting them when the world is no longer watching. Every gain they enjoyed at the expense of your pain is now turning against them. Life has a way of collecting debts with precision. What they thought was a blessing is revealing itself to be a curse in disguise. Their success, once their proudest possession, is now a reminder of the wrong they committed. They see it in their own reflections, in the emptiness that greets them despite their outward wealth. They feel it in the hollowness of their triumphs, in the way their victories fail to bring the satisfaction they expected. And it grows. It grows silently but relentlessly, this rot within their success. The applause fades, the admiration turns cold, the fruits of their labor spoil in their hands. They try to hold on, to tighten their grip, but the more they cling to their fading glory, the more it crumbles between their fingers. They are trapped in a prison of their own making, watching helplessly as the empire they built on cruelty begins to collapse from the inside out. Their success, once a symbol of their supposed superiority, is now a daily reminder of their corruption. It whispers to them in the quiet hours, reminding them that no achievement built upon the suffering of others can stand forever. And as they continue their desperate performance for the world, they know deep inside that the rot is irreversible. The decay has taken root, and it will not stop until every illusion of their triumph has been consumed. They will become prisoners of their own mind. There is no prison more suffocating than the one built within the walls of the human mind. There is no prison more suffocating than the one built within the walls of the human mind. Bars made not of iron but of guilt. Chains forged not from metal but from memory. The people who hurt you, those who wronged you with such confidence, who tore through your life as if it were theirs to destroy, believed they could escape judgment by hiding their actions from the world. They thought that if no one saw, no punishment would follow. But they could not hide from themselves. They could not silence the voices inside their own heads. At first they dismissed it. In the beginning their minds were quiet, satisfied with their victories. They slept peacefully, unaware of the storm quietly gathering beneath the surface. But guilt is patient. Regret does not knock loudly at first, it whispers. It begins as a faint, almost forgettable noise in the back of the mind, something they tell themselves they can ignore, something they believe they are strong enough to silence. Yet, as the days pass, those whispers grow louder, more persistent, more consuming. They cannot escape it though they try. They fill their days with noise, with distractions, with endless pursuits to occupy their thoughts. They surround themselves with people, with indulgence, with shallow pleasures meant to drown out the weight of what they've done. But the mind is a merciless echo chamber. No matter how loud the world outside becomes, the inner voice grows louder still. The silence they fear most waits for them at the end of every day, creeping into their thoughts when they lie awake at night. Have you ever noticed how restless they've become? How their smiles no longer reach their eyes? How their laughter sounds forced, strained, hollow? These are not small signs. These are the cracks forming in the prison walls of their mind. They begin to sense that something is wrong, something they cannot name, something they cannot flee. They feel it in their racing heart when they close their eyes, in the tightness of their chest when memories of their cruelty resurface without warning. They feel it in the way their thoughts spiral, returning again and again to the same haunting images: your face, your tears, your pain. And these images do not fade with time. They sharpen. They become clearer, more vivid, more relentless. What they thought they buried in the past has become a living ghost, following them into every moment of quiet. They may appear calm on the outside, maintaining the facade they've worn for so long, but inside they are drowning in a sea of their own creation. Every moment of betrayal, every act of cruelty, every careless word has become a stone tied around their neck, pulling them deeper into mental torment.
They may not confess it, and they likely never will. Their pride will not allow them to admit the truth, not to you, not to anyone, but you must know this. They are prisoners, and their mind is the cruelest warden they will ever face. Unlike the walls of an actual prison, these walls cannot be escaped by breaking free or running away. The mind travels with them everywhere. There is no distance far enough to outrun one's own conscience. There is no distraction powerful enough to erase the memories that haunt them. Picture them in their quietest moments when the noise fades and the world turns still. It is then that their torment is most severe. The mind, stripped of its defenses, floods them with images they cannot control. Scenes replay with brutal clarity. They see your trust, the trust they shattered. They see your kindness, the kindness they abused. They see your pain, the pain they caused. These memories are not fleeting, they are etched deeply, and they rise to the surface when least expected. They once believed that time would erase their guilt, but time, instead of being their savior, has become their enemy. Each passing day tightens the chains around their mind. What they once suppressed now emerges with force. Their imagination turns against them, crafting vivid nightmares that replay their wrongdoings in endless loops. They wake in cold sweats, breathing heavily, their heart racing, not because of an external threat, but because of the internal storm that never ceases. They fear being alone, yet solitude is inevitable. They fear reflection, yet their thoughts cannot be silenced. They become trapped in an endless cycle of avoidance and confrontation, running from themselves while being pursued by the shadows of their own making. They dread the quiet because it is in the quiet that truth speaks loudest. And though they may hide this suffering from the world, though they may mask their torment with forced smiles and empty words, inside they are unraveling. Their mind, once a sanctuary, has become their cage, a cage that tightens with every breath, with every heartbeat, with every reminder of the pain they inflicted. And no matter how far they go, no matter how much they try to rebuild, this prison travels with them. A relentless reminder that justice has found a home within their very thoughts. Their circle will collapse and isolation will find them. In the beginning, they were surrounded by voices that praised them, eyes that admired them, hands that applauded their every move. They had built themselves a circle, a fortress of people who fed their arrogance, who celebrated their cleverness, who echoed their lies as truth. This circle gave them power. It gave them validation. It gave them the illusion of safety, as if the cheers of their companions could drown out the quiet warnings of their conscience. They felt invincible in that crowd. Surrounded by supporters, they believed they were untouchable. They moved boldly, confident that as long as they had these people around them, no consequences would reach their doorstep. And while they inflicted harm upon the innocent, while they manipulated and betrayed without hesitation, they counted on their circle to protect them, to shield them from judgment, to keep their sins buried beneath layers of admiration and loyalty. But what they failed to understand is that such circles are not built on truth. They are not bound by genuine respect or enduring loyalty. They are built on convenience, on shared interests, on the shallow foundations of mutual gain. These people did not gather around them out of love or integrity. They gathered because they believed they could benefit from the association. As long as the image of success remained intact, the circle would hold. But the moment cracks appeared in that image, the moment the first hints of their true nature began to surface, that circle would begin to crumble. And now that crumbling has begun. One by one, the voices that once praised them fall silent. The hands that once applauded them withdraw. The eyes that once admired them turn away, first in subtle doubt, then in open disapproval. They feel it, even if they do not fully understand it. They sense the shift in the air around them, the coldness creeping into once warm conversations, the hesitations in greetings that used to be filled with enthusiasm. Isolation does not arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, like dusk swallowing the day. At first, they try to dismiss it. They convince themselves that it is just a phase, that their circle will remain loyal, that their influence is too strong to waver. But the truth is relentless. People who once stood by their side begin to distance themselves, fearing the consequences of association. Friends become strangers. Allies become silent observers, unwilling to risk their own safety for the sake of defending what can no longer be defended. And here lies the profound justice of life. The same people who cheered them on in their cruelty now become the witnesses of their unraveling. Those who once celebrated their victories now watch quietly as their empire collapses. There is a certain loneliness that comes not from being physically alone, but from being surrounded by people who no longer believe in you, who no longer see you as untouchable, who no longer pretend to admire the person you pretended to be. Have you ever noticed how they cling tighter to those remaining, how their laughter grows louder in empty rooms, how their gestures become more desperate as the crowd thins? It is the behavior of someone who senses the inevitable but refuses to accept it. They are grasping at the remnants of their crumbling circle, trying to hold it together as it slips through their fingers like sand. But no matter how tightly they cling, the collapse continues, unstoppable and merciless. What they fail to understand is that people are drawn to strength, but they flee from sinking ships. When the whispers of truth begin to circulate, when the facade of their false greatness begins to fracture, even their closest companions begin to retreat. Fear replaces admiration, doubt replaces loyalty, self-preservation overtakes allegiance, and slowly, inevitably, they find themselves standing alone, surrounded not by supporters, but by silence. Their isolation becomes a mirror, reflecting back to them the reality they tried so hard to escape. Without the noise of their circle to drown out their thoughts, they are left to face the echoes of their choices. Every broken relationship, every turned back, every abandoned friendship becomes a testimony against them. They come to understand, far too late, that their power was never truly their own. It was borrowed from the approval of others, and now it has been repossessed. And as they stand in this growing emptiness, a deep and gnawing realization takes root within them. They built their circle on lies, and lies cannot hold a structure together forever. What once felt like a fortress now feels like a ruin. The very people they once relied upon for strength have become reminders of their collapse. The more they search for comfort in familiar faces, the more they are met with coldness, indifference, or worse. The silent judgment of those who see them for who they truly are. They are left to wander the halls of their former glory, haunted by memories of a time when they were surrounded by admirers. But admiration is fleeting when it is based on deception. And now, in the quiet aftermath, they are left with nothing but echoes and shadows, a shell of the empire they once claimed. Their fall will be a lesson to all. There is a peculiar way the universe ensures that certain lessons are not forgotten. Some people live their lives believing they can act as they please without consequence, without accountability. They walk through life with a reckless sense of immunity, wounding others without remorse, mocking those they've hurt, believing themselves to be beyond the reach of justice. But life, in its quiet wisdom, has a way of turning such people into living examples, not simply for their own reckoning, but for the instruction of all who bear witness to their fall. When they hurt you, they believed their actions would be swallowed by time, forgotten by others, buried beneath the noise of daily life. They assumed that your suffering would remain invisible, hidden behind the walls of your silence. They thought they could humiliate you without ever facing their own. But what they failed to understand is that life has a way of bringing hidden things to the surface, not just to punish the offender, but to warn the world around them. Their downfall becomes a message written in bold, unmistakable letters across the pages of life. It begins subtly. Whispers of their wrongdoings start to circulate, carried not by your voice, but by the natural unfolding of truth. People who once turned a blind eye start to see clearly. The admiration they once received turns into questioning glances, conversations laced with suspicion. It is as if an invisible hand is pulling back the curtain they so carefully drew around themselves, exposing their actions to the cold light of day. They tried to build walls around their sins, But the winds of truth erode those walls until nothing remains hidden. And as their life begins to unravel, those who once envied their success or believed in their false charm are forced to confront a harsh reality. Greatness built on the suffering of others cannot endure. Those who once followed them with blind loyalty step back, observing the cracks, the fractures in the image they once revered. They begin to understand that the victories they celebrated were not clean victories. They were victories stained by betrayal, by manipulation, by cruelty toward the innocent. There is a deep and quiet satisfaction in witnessing this shift, not because you crave their pain, but because it restores balance, because it reassures the world and your own heart that no cruelty passes through life without an answer. Their collapse becomes a living testament, a loud declaration that those who harm the innocent cannot escape justice forever. Others look at their downfall and see the unmistakable handwriting of justice across every event that befalls them. Their life, once envied, becomes a warning sign. People start to say, "Do you see what has happened to them?" They whisper, "Remember how they treated others. Remember the innocent they hurt." Their story spreads, not as a tale of triumph, but as a cautionary tale that echoes far beyond their immediate circle. Even those who never knew you begin to learn from their example. Even those who never heard your cries begin to understand the weight of actions that once went unseen.
And it is not just strangers who learn from this. Those who once stood beside them, who once enabled their cruelty, are forced to reckon with the consequences as well. They see firsthand how swiftly fortune can turn, how quickly the foundation of lies crumbles beneath the feet of the arrogant. They watch, eyes wide with fear, as the very person they once applauded becomes trapped in a downfall so public, so undeniable, that it burns a lesson into the hearts of all who witness it. Have you ever seen the change in their faces when they realize this? That moment when they understand their collapse is no longer private, that their suffering has become a spectacle not of triumph but of tragedy. It dawns on them slowly like a cold sunrise, chilling and inescapable. They feel the weight of eyes upon them, not eyes of admiration but eyes of judgment, eyes of caution, eyes that silently say, "We see you now for who you truly are." Their downfall reverberates beyond themselves. It becomes a reminder in boardrooms, in families, in friendships, in quiet moments of temptation. It speaks to the hearts of those who might be tempted to follow the same cruel path. Beware. Beware the lure of hurting the innocent. Beware the fleeting satisfaction of betrayal, for it leads only to ruin. Their story becomes a deterrent more powerful than any spoken warning, and though they never intended to be an example, life has made them one. Not by choice, not by design, but by the natural unfolding of justice. Their life, which they thought would be a monument to their power, has become a cautionary tale, etched into the memories of all who witnessed their rise and their inevitable fall. And no matter how much they wish to erase this chapter, it is written too deeply, too visibly, for them to conceal. So now, as we stand at the edge of these truths, take a breath and let it settle deep into your soul. You were never truly alone in your pain. Though the world may have turned its back, though their circle cheered them on as they tore through your trust, though you wept in silence wondering if justice would ever awaken, know this: justice has never been asleep. It has been moving silently, gathering strength, weaving their downfall thread by thread, moment by moment. Every silent tear you cried was seen. Every night you lay awake, asking why they could harm you without fear, why they could break your spirit and still sleep soundly. Those nights were never in vain. Life was listening. God was listening. And justice, though patient, is never absent. It watches the innocent with fierce protection and watches the arrogant with a quiet, certain resolve. Look now at the unfolding. Their strength is failing. Their once proud confidence has withered into trembling fear. The circle that once celebrated their cruelty has scattered, leaving them exposed in the cold winds of their consequences. The mind they believed was their fortress has become their tormentor, a relentless echo chamber of regret, shame, and guilt. Their successes, which once made them feel untouchable, now decay from within, rotting beneath the surface of their false victories. And as they stand in the ruins of what they once called triumph, they become the living proof that no one escapes the balance of life. No mask can hide the truth forever. No alliance can protect the guilty from the weight of justice when it descends. Their life, once envied, is now a lesson, not only for them, but for the world that watched them rise on the backs of the innocent. But for you, this is your moment of quiet victory, not the kind that shouts, not the kind that demands attention, but the victory that fills your chest with peace, knowing that you did not have to lower yourself to their level for justice to find its way. You endured, you survived the storm they created, and now you witness the floodwaters that rise against them, not by your hand, but by the unseen hand that governs this life with perfect wisdom. Hold your head high, not in arrogance, but in quiet dignity. Let your heart rest, for the burden of their wrongdoing is no longer yours to carry. Life has reclaimed that weight and placed it squarely on their shoulders, where it belongs. Your only task now is to live freely, to walk forward into the light that waits beyond the shadows of your suffering. The innocent are never abandoned. The pure-hearted are never forsaken. Though your journey was marked by pain, it is also marked by redemption. You have been carried through the fire, and though they try to consume you with their cruelty, you emerge not as ashes, but as proof that goodness is protected, and justice, though it may walk slowly, never loses its way. Let their story be a reminder for the world to see. Let their fall be the echo that travels far and wide, a signal to all who dare lift their hand against the innocent. The consequences will come. They always come, and when they arrive, they come not as whispers, but as storms, unavoidable, unrelenting, unforgiving. You, who once felt powerless, can now breathe freely. You do not have to chase revenge. You do not have to seek out justice with your own hands. It is already here. It is already unfolding. And all you must do is stand, watch, and live as the innocent always do, with the quiet strength that no one can take away. Because God cripples those who dare to hurt the innocent. And you, my friend, are living proof that the innocent are never truly defeated.